Alright, so let's work through this. I've already got a scene, you've made a scene, I hope you haven't lost it already. If you have, it may be worth downloading my one, which is on week 5, at the very bottom of the page. So the first thing we need to do when we're looking to take things out of Maya is make sure that we're working to the correct scale. So last week we covered preferences, right? Setting up the Maya scene. So we open Windows, settings, preferences, settings. We're working in centimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my entire scene and press Control and G. Whoops, I press Control H. So I press Control and G, or if we select everything, we can go to Edit, Group. Okay, Group. There we go. And what that does is, within the outliner, if I go to Windows and Outliner, you've not seen this before. We've created a group which contains all of the assets within our scene. If I double click on this, I can rename this room underscore total, just so I know exactly what it is. Now, if I go to edit, delete all by type and history, I was hoping it would get rid of all of this, but instead, I'm going to just quickly clean up my scene so there's nothing in here which is extra. There we go. Right. So I got my light and I got my room group. So now whenever I click on assets within my scene, I can still grab all the individual components. But if I select something and press up on the keyboard, it will automatically grab the entire group. The benefits of creating a group is if I try and scale everything up whilst I've got a group selected, everything will stay in the same relative position to each other. So there's no offsetting or unexpected results. Whereas if I quickly just grab everything as individual assets and try and scale it up, oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no. So I just selected everything and Control and G to make a group. If I've made a group already and deselected it, select the objects, press up on the keyboard, and we can reselect the group. So the default character in Unreal is about 186 centimeters, I think. So it's about 6'8", because the character was set up for Unreal Tournament, and those characters are kind of superhero sized. So let's say, right, the doorway needs to be at least 6'8" plus a little bit. So we'll say, rather than saying a number randomly, instead we're going to go to Create, Measure Tools, Distance, and I'm pressing spacebar to come out of that viewport. And I want to go into the view that lets me see the door frame. There we go. So if I left click at the very base of the door, hold Shift and draw, I'm going to say to the middle. We say, right now, my room is my doorway is 60 centimeters tall. So I'm going to grab the locator, the little plus, and move this all the way up until I get to 186.1. There we go. Right. So now that I've got that done, if I select an object, press up, so I've got the whole group selected, and I'm going to quickly scale the entire scene up until my doorway, I'm going to use move tool to reposition it, is more or less, let me just realign the bottom. There we go. So right now we're a little bit short. There we go. So now the locator, you can just about see it there, is just in the middle of the door frame. So right now, this door frame at that point is 6'6". So if we then re-grab the scene, and this time we're going to scale it up a little bit, so that when the player comes through the doorway, he isn't going to slap his head on the frame. Let's scale it up so maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room. I'm not 6'6", so I'm going to base this on how much headspace I have when I go through a doorway. Let's say maybe there-ish. So it might be a little bit wrong, but as long as we're in the ballpark area in this instance, it will be okay. Okay, so we know that the player, or at the very least the Unreal player, will walk into this room and things are not going to look absolutely wacky. I've just realized that this bottom, I've given thickness to this floor. So I'm going to just quickly realign it so that the floor or the bottom of the stool, just there, lines up with the locator. I'm going to scale it up a little bit more, just so I know for sure when the player comes into Unreal, he's not going to be too big to get through a doorway. Okay, with that done, I know the doorway is right, so everything else in this scene should be in the region of right. It'll be good enough. Okay, so at this point, what we need to do is begin. I can say that every asset in this scene is the right size. If it isn't, I'll need to come back and remeasure and do some tweaking, but that's going to have a knock-on effect to the entire scene. In this case, because I was working from a piece of concept art, what mattered to me was it looks like the concept art, not it being real world or playable for a game. Okay, so let's take the bed as an example. I'm going to quickly just click and drag over the whole bed area, holding control. I'm going to deselect all the things I don't want. So I'm just moving my camera around to make it easier to get rid of things. And if I press 4 on my keyboard, I can go into wireframe mode, get rid of a few more things, get rid of that shelf. We don't want that. So now I've just got a bed. And if I press 5, we're back into shaded mode. 7 is back into lit mode. But I don't really need shaded right now. Okay, so in this case, I've got my bed. I don't want to create a group. When I take this into Unreal, I want it to stay as one object rather than about 9. So what I'm going to do, I've got everything selected. Oh, and I've also got a little lamp. Let's get rid of that. We go to Mesh and Combine. I'm going to press 1 because I'd use 3 on the keyboard to smooth my pillars to try and make them look a little bit more swanky. And when I combined it, it completely destroyed the meshes. Okay, so at this point, whereas when I select the group and press up, it grabs everything, I can still go back and grab individuals. In this case, when I click on anything, I get the entire object. We can undo it if we mesh and separate, but because we're taking it out of this engine and we want it all to stay together in Unreal rather than coming in as 9 separate assets, we've combined it all together. Right, so if we click on the little grid icon, we can see our world grid again. It might not be too visible on your screen, but just coming along here, we've got our Z-axis, and along here is our X. I'm trying to use the control button to pulse along the line. It's a slightly thicker line. What we want to do is, I'm going to press Control and D to duplicate my object. And then what I need to do is snap the object to the middle of the world. So I'm going to just quickly hide my group. So I'm going to reselect the group, and in the layer, create a new layer and assign the selected objects. And I press V to turn it off. There you go. So now with this selected, I want to turn on this little magnet so that when I move anything, it automatically snaps to the grid. So whenever we take anything out of Maya to put into Unreal, we need to make sure that the object stays on these intersecting bold lines. This is called your world 0, 0. So although the numbers over here are saying 508, minus 282, minus 234, those numbers are relative. So it's based on where the object started. So I could move it up here. And if I reset my transformations, the relative transformations are 0. So we can say, oh, this is the object's starting point, the object's position relative to itself. If I moved it off to the right, we're going along in minus 100s on the X. But in reality, this space back down here is world 0, 0. So I'm going to quickly... so we need to make sure the object is on this point, as well as if you press Insert on your keyboard, or D, like you have to hold down D, but I think Insert is a bit better solution, because now it frees you up to use the keyboard to press. We're not going to do it on the keyboard, we're going to do it on the camera mode. So I turned off Snap to Grid, and now I'm going to turn on Snap to Vertice, or Snap to Point. Now if I grab the little yellow line, the little yellow circle, sorry, I like to set up my objects so that the pivot point is always in the bottom left corner. And that means if I was just to try and snap objects together like a Lego set, I know that the end of one object is going to snap to the same point every time, rather than having it in the middle of the mesh, which is heavily influenced by its dimensions. I'm grossly simplifying here, and it's not really applicable. But if we just start by saying, right, every asset we make, we're going to snap it to the bottom left corner, and we're then going to turn on snap to grid again, turn off snap to point, and make sure that the pivot point is at world 0, 0. Okay, so now whenever I move my asset, rather than it rotating from the middle, it's always going to rotate from that point. Okay, so that helps the level designer who would come along after you in a professional case build levels really quickly without having to kind of sit there and manually line things up pixel by pixel. All right, and once we're in that position, modify again, freeze transformations, and that's going to zero out everything over here. There we go. And again, just for good practice, edit, delete my type, and I'm not going to do that yet. Object selected. Whenever we take something into Unreal, it's going to, what's the word? It's going to triangulate the mesh. So what we're going to do, rather than letting Unreal do it, I can already see that there's some faces here which are not, have got more than 4 edges. So I'm going to quickly just select the mesh and go to Mesh and Triangulate. There we go. So this just means when I take it into Unreal, because I've let Maya do this instead, I've got an opportunity to kind of see if anything isn't working and troubleshoot it. The kind of the hints that things not working would be really kind of weird and out of place shading. And in this case, everything looks okay. So just quickly select the mesh, edit, delete by type, and delete history. Okay. So with that done, just before we export it, we want to go to Windows, setting some preferences, and go to the plugin manager. And we're just going to scroll all the way down. Or, yep, there it is, fbxmaya.mll. So we need to make sure that this is turned on. I know that on the college machines it often gets turned off. So fbxmaya.mll, so make sure both of these are turned on. Close it and go back to File, Export Selection. And we're going to choose the file format of FBX. We're going to save it to the desktop as bed 01, just because I never know if I'm going to end up with another bed. And in this case, we want smoothing groups turned on. At some point, we will come back around to a lot of these settings and explore them in greater detail. And that should be fine. So we're going to export that. And that is done. Okay, so in the next video, we'll cover how to import that asset into Unreal, as well as setting up materials and getting a level pulled together.